Hey everybody, welcome back to my Season 5 support guide. For this video, I am going to be going over consumables and relics, as well as the last video got a bit too long, so I'm also going to be going over the level 1 in general, so what you build along with your blessing. I have Guardian's Blessing here, but as we went over in the last video, there are still other options you can go, but for most games we'll be using Guardians. So I'll go over what you start along with that, what I think the pros and cons of each are, and then what relic you pick up at level 1, what relic I think is good at level 12, and then consumables throughout the game. So, starting off with level 1, you have, I guess I'll go over the most vanilla start, which would be kind of what you're accustomed to seeing in previous seasons, which would be Guardian's Blessing boots. So, compare this to other seasons. This is 1,200 total gold, 700 plus 500, whereas in previous seasons boots were 300 gold and starter items were 800, so it would be 1,100 total, so 400 for pots. So what you used to be able to do would be go, say like a health chalice plus, 2 health pots, or go, a health chalice plus 2 multi pots, mana pots, whatever. Now this could be your start. So I guess I'll compare what this would be. So buying to 0 basically would be something like this, where you're spending 200 gold in health potions, so 4 health potions, and then 100 gold in multis, so it's 100, 200 is 300, 800, and then 1500. This would be buying to 0, and then this would be another version of buying to 0 with boots 1, so I'll talk about the differences with this. So the boot start, in my opinion, is still very strong. I think that you have really good sustain with it. Obviously, you have multiple options for potions you can go. You can even choose if you think that you're going to win the lane pretty easily. Say I'm something like a Sylvanas, or maybe you're just like, maybe you just have a really lane dominant matchup, right? Maybe you have like an Uller or an Izanami who has a very good level 1 and can clear very strong. Maybe you don't need all these potions, and you just say, hey, I'm not going to go any multi-potions, just pretend that's a 0, and I'm only going to go 2 health pots, and I'm going to save a bunch of gold, and then I'll get my boots really quick, so you can get your boots at a 900 gold back, which is super early in the game, and that could be very good for you. Or you could just, buy to 0, as we were talking about. So comparing these two starts, I don't really think that the Health Chalice level 1 is that great. It is good on some characters that don't really have great sustain. I think this can be good. So for a character like, I guess Athena's a decent one, or it would really be better for a character that's kind of like in their face, I guess, at level 1. So maybe like a Bacchus, we'll say. A character that really has to engage often and does a lot of damage, and you might need to heal up poke. It could be very valuable for a character like a Bacchus, where you're able to have that chalice throughout the game. You can take some extra poke. It'll help you stay out on the map longer. This is kind of a more mid-game investment than this start. This start would be... This start, if the lane was completely even, so it was a mirror match or something like that, this start will beat out this support if they play correctly every time, because you're just going to be able to trade more and take more damage from the creeps and from the enemy lane, and eventually push them out and push them into their tower. This start would be better as you're kind of getting poked by their mage in the mid-game, and that type of thing. I guess while we're going over Chalice, we could also go for another start, which is double Chalice. This was something that I thought was really, really good at the start of the season. The reason for that was Chalice is 300 gold. That is now getting nerfed to 400 gold on 5.4, so assume that we're talking about 5.4 Chalice. So this would be a total of a 1,400 gold start. It would be 700, 300, 400, which is a 700 plus 700. So yeah, you would have a 1,400 gold start. You'd save 100, but you can't spend it anywhere else because you already have your consumables filled. And then you would just have 2 chalices. So I actually think if you're going to go healing chalice, that this start is superior than over this one. The reason I feel that way is I think that in your first back or two, especially with the 300 gold chalice, I think that it's very important to get that chalice online. When it goes to 400 gold, I don't know if I'll really feel the same. I guess when it goes to 400 gold, there's a chance that you don't buy it and you just go for 2 normal wards, in which case you don't want to be locked into a Chalice of Healing if that's the case, because then you can't have the two, like, it's better to confirm that you're going to have vision every single back and you're going to have health every single back with this start, whereas with this one I feel like it's a little bit worse because you won't always have consistent vision, and also, like, your vision on the map, if you buy a Sentry here, I think that having two normals on this map will beat the Sentry because there are a lot less, I guess kind of like hotspots on the map, or whatever you want to call them, where one ward can kind of give you vision of everywhere. There's much fewer spots like that on the map, so I feel for that reason, Sentry, for that reason I'm out. But for that reason, I don't think Sentries are quite as good in the early game as something like a Chalice, and if you're wanting to power spike and go throughout the game, I think you're better off with this start. Another thing to keep in mind is that Chalice of Healing in general, I think you can get a lot of gold back from Guardian's Blessing, and also both of these items that you rush in the beginning of the game, which we'll go over in another part of this kind of support guide. They both give you HP 5, and because of that, I don't really value the Chalice healing, and I don't really think it's that valuable. I think there's just better options and better starts that you can go to. So out of these three, I would say that Boots is actually my favorite. Reason being, it lets you get your boots on super quick. It's only an 1100 gold back or a 1050 gold back depending on what boots you go. So it'll be 1050 for where are boots? Why can't I see them? Whatever. It'll be 1050 for either reinforced or CDR shoes, and then 1100 if you want to go pen boots or travelers. I think another start I've seen people do, and I don't really know how good it is, and I guess I'll talk about this one for a bit as well, is Glowing Emerald start. So the advantage of this is it's only 100 gold more than boots, but it gives you actual stats at level 1 that are pretty valuable. It gives you 100 health and 10 HP 5, whereas boots is just giving you 6% movement speed. And then you have 1300 gold between these, and then you can go potions. So you can go 4 potions like you would in Season 4, and you can go something like this. So this start is really good at level 1, no doubt about it. It gives you a lot of health. It lets you progress in your build. The thing I don't like about this is it kind of forces you to rush Thebes, and I don't know if that's always the best option. I guess in a game, if you decide that you want to go Thebes, that it can be very good, but a lot of the times I personally find it advantageous to go for boots first and then kind of feel out the game. If your team gets off to a really good start, then going Thebes would be great, but if your team starts to fall behind and you need to fight on invades and you're locked into rushing Thebes with a Glowing Emerald start, it can hurt you a lot, because then you're going into a stacking item and you're not going to have prots early, but you have to defend your buffs, and if you lose that fight, you potentially give up early gold furies, you give up early kills, and it starts getting really bad. In a controlled environment, sure, maybe Glowing Emerald is great, or if you get ahead, it can be great. I just don't think the risk reward is really there, and also I just don't think it's that great. Like at level 1, I don't really think this start is all that much better than this one. You lose 2 potions and gain the Glowing Emerald passive, which is better, especially level 1. Like, if you're ever in a situation where both supports have both of these potions ticking and there's a wave, obviously the one with Glowing Emerald is going to regen more. I just think the level 1 power spike here is good, but I don't think it's good enough to forgo boots. I think having an 1100 gold back, having that first back be really impactful is super important on a level 5 buff fight or a level 5 fight in general. I think early fights are something that's just bound to happen on this map, in lane, on buffs, wherever, and I think that having the extra rotation ability from boots, or having, I guess, just the extra power if you go, you know, pen or cooldown boots, or having, you know, the cooldown, or having the movement speed and the MP5 from travelers, I think is very valuable, and I think getting that online quicker is very important. So I actually think that this would be my number 1 option for the start of the game. This would be my number 2. I'd say this is number 3, and then this is the 4th. Outside of that, a couple other starts you could do is go something really aggressive. So you could go like a Mage's Blessing, and then you could maybe go... I don't really know if you'd want to go any of these offensive items. I guess the easiest one would be like a breastplate or something. It seems a little weird, but you go something like this. You'll have the mana sustain from Mage's Blessing, health sustain from the Chalice, and then you'll have a little bit of prot to box. It's kind of weird, but if you're playing a character like... I guess we'll say like Nox, for example. You could go Mage's Blessing and then go Boots, and then you still have a little bit of Fizz Prot for the landing phase, so you'll feel more like a Guardian. And then you can go into Breastplate and you'll feel good. Again, I don't really think the start is that good. I'm just going over potential options. I would still do the other ones I said above. After that, I should go over what boots you buy. I think I forgot about that. And then we'll go over relics and the other consumables. So, for boots, I actually think all 4 of them are very viable. The Travelers of this season are a lot different than Travelers prior, where you would get that extra gold, and that was a pretty big deal. But really, the reason you would always buy these boots were for the MP4, for the movement speed. It used to be that the MP5, or the HP5 rather, in previous seasons was really, really good. As I mentioned, and we'll go over in the next part, you get HP5 from a lot of other items this season, so you don't miss this as much as I thought you would. I actually think the MP5 is really good. Having Traveler's Shoes and Guardian's Blessing will pretty much guarantee that you have basically unlimited mana, unless you're really misusing your abilities or you're fighting a lot. You pretty much have unlimited mana throughout the early and the mid game, and that's really nice. And then the movement speed, I think, out of base, the passive is whatever. You know, it's a nice little perk. I don't think it's anything too crazy, but having that 25% movement speed in a team fight is a really, really big deal. Like, that can be the difference between living or dying. It can be the difference between catching a kill and dropping a kill. It helps you juke if you're being engaged on. I can't really stress how important movement speed is. It just having 7% extra movement speed, while it doesn't seem that much, and you may think, oh, well, this one gives procs and health, and this gives cooldown, and this gives damage, you really have to value the movement speed super highly here, and the unlimited mana, basically. I think Travelers are still a great boots option. You could pretty much go them in any Guardian, but I don't think it's where it was in previous seasons where, you know, it's probably the boot option that you should pick up almost every time. Moving on, you have Reinforced Shoes. These, again, I think are in a great spot. I think they're very, very strong. So, there are a lot of gods that I think kind of get hurt a lot by the enemy support going to Reinforced Shoes. One of them is the god I'm hovering, which is Athena. If the enemy team has an Athena and is looking to taunt you into a mid laner combo or something, having that crowd control reduction can be huge. It'll turn that taunt into like a 0.8 second taunt in the early game, so it makes you really hard to lock down. The extra health makes you super tanky, and then that passive in the early game, especially against dot damage or against, you know, some auto attackers, something like an Izanami maybe, where it'll stack that passive very quickly because it'll proc on the front and the back swing. It'll give you a lot of extra protections. 18 protections in the early game is huge, especially with if you go Gauntlet of Thebes, for example, and you don't have protections in the early game. Something like Reinforced Shoes can help you feel tanky enough so that as you're stacking up, they can't really kill you, and then you'll obviously have the full stacks from Gauntlet of Thebes, and then all of a sudden you're basically unkillable, and I think that's really, really good. So again, another very viable boot option. Shoes of Focus, these are kind of your greedy option, probably not as greedy as Shoes of the Magi, but these are your greedy option that also scales. So this is, I got ahead, or I'm looking to fight early, and I want to utilize the cooldown. Again, the mana, very nice for the early game. The extra damage, very nice. There are a lot of characters that I think use these very well. One of them, the new Guardian Cerberus, I think is really, really good with Shoes of Focus. 10% cooldown on his ultimate, which is a 115 second base cooldown. Knocks a lot of time off of that ult. It helps you kind of use it more with Blink and other relics like that to be aggressive more, and it also lowers the cooldown on your stun, which if you hit can be very impactful. Other gods like Geb having the shield on a shorter cooldown, really nice. Athena having her taunt on a shorter cooldown, Fafnir having his hammer on a shorter cooldown. You get the kind of idea. Terra having combos, you know, the whole thing. Doesn't matter what god you're playing, it's just cooldown. Same thing that I was saying about Mage's Blessing. Extra damage and cooldown is never a bad thing for support. And then going over Shoes of the Magi, just having the pen. The only character that I think, actually there are two. There are two characters that I think are really, really, really good with Shoes of the Magi, and I would argue that these shoes are better than the other three options almost no matter what, and that is Ares and Bacchus. And the reason is both of those gods do a ton of damage. Going over Ares, he is very, very low mana cost. I don't really think that you need the extra mana or the extra MP5 from the Travelers or the Shoes of Focus. And then the reinforced shoes, I think you're better off being a threat and doing damage early than you are trying to be super tanky. And I think that Pen Boots Ares is probably just the best option. In previous seasons, Pen Boots would kind of punish you a bit because it was an extra 200 gold. But now it is the exact same as Travelers. 50 gold really isn't that noticeable. And I think that they're really, really strong. I played an Ares game on stream, or, you know, a few of them. And the amount of damage you can do with 10 pen, you wouldn't think is that much. But when people don't have prot, especially if the enemy support is rushing a Gauntlet of Thebes or a Sovereignty, very rarely do people actually rush a Heartward Amulet or any magical defense. You can just shred people as Ares and get super far ahead, and I think Pen Boots are just the best boots option for him. As well for Bacchus, you really want to just look to... With Bacchus, he's not really a god that you can kind of like poke and then get out. Like, you're going in and you're committing to kill somebody when you flop in, and I think having the extra damage for a Bacchus can be a huge deal, especially if you're fighting in lane or over a purple buff, and you flop the enemy support and then combo them. You can basically blow them up instantly, same sort of idea as Ares. They're not going to really be building magical damage early, and I think it's really good. Other gods that do a lot of damage I think could use these boots well as Cerberus. He does need the mana a little bit more than the other two, I'd say. Actually, maybe a little bit less than Bacchus, but about the same. But if you hit his stun, if you hit Cerberus' stun, or you get a full channel off of your 2 with Pen Boots, you can pretty much 100 to 0 carries if you get your full combo off on them and they don't beads anything or Aegis anything, and it can be really, really effective. So Pen Boots, I'd say, are the most viable they've been in support in any other season, and I think they're actually pretty strong. How I would rank them is kind of hard to say. I think it depends on the enemy team comp, and it's just going to take a lot of time. I'd say if you're unsure and you're trying to learn the support role and you don't really know what you like, I'd say Traveler Shoes are your best bet just to make you feel faster and it'll help your mana problems. I think if you're having problems getting picked or, you know, that type of stuff, or if you think the enemy team comp is something that is going to try to engage on you a lot, maybe cracking you off cooldown with like a taunt Kraken combo, or they're trying to, you know, Scylla combo you, or they're just trying to have their mage basically go on you, reinforced shoes can be great to get you out of the early game. Also, like I said, with stacking Thebes, if you need to feel tankier but you really want to go Thebes, reinforced shoes can get you out of the early game, and it's very nice. Shoes of Focus I'd pretty much recommend where if you get ahead in laning phase and you are on a good mid to late game support, something like a Geb for example, if you somehow get ahead in the early game, I would recommend just going Shoes of Focus. It'll ensure that you have a good transition throughout the rest of the game. You won't have mana problems. You'll do plenty of damage to continue fighting, and then the cooldown reduction will be great. And then, like I said, there are a few gods where I think Pen Boots are great. If you get ahead and you think you're going to be playing in their face and doing a lot of damage, I think you go something like Shoes of the Magi's. I think all of them are very viable. I would recommend playing with them all, kind of on your own terms. But yeah, again, I think most games, I think you're going to want Travelers. I think having the rotational power and having the MP5 is just really nice. But I definitely think all 3 of these boots, or all 4 of these boots, are very viable. And I think that the other 3 of Reinforced Shoes, Travelers, and Shoes of the Magi are being overbought. I think Shoes of the Focus are actually the most underrated of these 4. And I think they are really, really good. And I would look towards going it more. Next up, I'm actually going to move relics to the next part, and I'm just going to talk about consumables here. So I'm going to talk about relics and your first couple items, so kind of your core support stuff, in the next video. So anyways, we are going to go over consumables, so here we go. I kind of went over these in the start of the builds, but might as well go over them now. I think these are pretty much all we care about. I guess I should have all the potion types. And there we go. Okay, so Chalice of Mana, never buy it. All of the starter items give you plenty of mana. If you're Hell, maybe you should buy it as Hell. Even then, I don't really know if you need it. You could probably just get away with just getting a couple of extra mana pots, or again, Travelers, or CDR shoes, Shoes of Focus, plus the Guardians or Maiden's Blessing should pretty much give you unlimited mana. I really would not go Chalice of Mana. Hell is the only exception where it is kind of justifiable to go Chalice of Mana. So, deleting that one. As for Chalice of the Oracle, I'll talk about this one. I mentioned it in my patch notes review. This is 400 gold. Just treat it as if it's 400 gold. I was probably the main person last season who thought Chalice of the Oracle was really good. I bought it at Super Regionals a lot. I kind of brought it back going into that tournament. I talked with Jeff Hindla a lot about it, and I know that he liked it as well, and it just kind of depended on the situation, and we both thought that it was a really good item. And I guess with this new map, even before the buff to Chalice to bring it down to 300 gold, it already gets buffed just by the map. So I think because the map is such that there's a lot more corners and a lot more rocks and walls kind of obscuring vision, having vision in really small places is a lot more valuable than in previous seasons. And because of that, I think having the guaranteed warding from Chalice and being able to check a lot of corners with it is way better than just buying wards every back. I think investing the 400 gold is way better than spamming wards, so I wouldn't really worry about normal wards. In my opinion, I would focus on getting your first 3 items in every single game should be Guardian's Blessing, whatever boots you want. I'm just going to leave them as boots too, and then Chalice of the Oracle. I think these should be your first 3 items no matter what in every game. It covers your early game, it handles your warding throughout the game, and it is just really, really good. The earlier you can get these 3 online, the better. Especially getting this stacked, the better it becomes. So, the other thing I don't get about it, like, the way people look at the math of Chalice of the Oracle is just off, because it only takes you, at 400 gold, it only takes you 3 backs. It's only an extra 300 gold on your first back. You're really only committing, and, like, if you're going to back and you're going to buy 2 normal wards, you can either buy 2 normal wards, or you could buy a Chalice. This is 100 gold, this is 400 gold, so you pay 300 extra, you back 3 times, it gives you 100 gold per back, you're completely even, you're fine. And then, so once you get to, like, I don't know, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, whenever you would hit your 4th back normally, it could be at any time in the game, really, you're just getting money, like, you're just making money, and then throughout the game, when you're playing off of buffs or objectives, like, you're easily going to get a return on your investment for Chalice of the Oracle. I don't think the early game punishes you to the point where you can't go this. It won't hurt the power spike in your build as much as it did in previous seasons, and I don't think you'll notice it in the early game. I would recommend going it pretty much every game. Sentry Ward, I think you want to keep your second consumable spot open, which is why I stressed against the double Chalice spot, or the double Chalice start. That ward spot is very, very important to have a sentry if you ever want to do a Gold Fury, or if you ever want to set up ganks. Sentry wards are sentry wards, right? Like, they're super good. And then for the early game level 1, don't buy mana potions unless you are on a healer or a god that is insanely mana hungry, which there aren't many. Guardian's Blessing gives you way more mana than it did in previous seasons, so Guardians, health potions, Monty potions should be about all you need. And that is the start of the game. I will go over core relics and core builds in the next video. I appreciate you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.